About 5 years ago, I purchased my first commercial building, which was 11 units in Akron, Ohio. Prior to doing that, my focus was largely on residential real estate, where I bought and flipped homes. As it stands today, I'm primarily doing commercial real estate deals, buying large multifamily deals, doing ground up development and also office redevelopment, and single tenant net lease like Dollar General, Dollar Tree, things like that. I've taken the gas off of the whole single family space just so I can focus on these bigger commercial deals. Today, I'll explain the difference between residential and commercial real estate as far as how to get into a deal. Certainly, there is a lot to getting into these deals, but this is just a very high level overview. Most people start investing in real estate. They opt to go to the residential side because it's much easier to get started. And most people are looking for a house they can buy and live in. So, certainly, the buyer pool is much bigger. But along with that, you're able to get in with a very low down payment. That's probably the biggest appeal. You can get in with an FHA loan, usually 3.5% down would get the deal done. If you're a veteran, you can get in with 0% down. I think for most people, they love that concept because they can get in, just buy a few homes and cash flow them, which is perfectly fine. As you progress past that, you become a full-time investor. You start realizing there's many other things you can do. You can also start wholesaling. You can do Airbnb. You can start flipping properties. You can pursue all these different things in the residential space. Uh, as you find some more success, many of these high level become well, they eventually become high level investors if they end up switching over to commercial real estate instead. That's the path I took anyway. I started off, as I said, with residential and flipped over to the commercial side. But first, let's go over the differences about what is a residential and what is a commercial. I think that might be a good starting point here. So, with residential real estate, residential is a single family home. It could be a townhome or a condo, it could be a mobile home as well. All these forms of residential real estate you can buy with a conventional loan, and typically they're 1 to 4 units. Duplex, triplex, fourplex is a good way to look at it. Commercial real estate, on the other hand, is pretty much any real estate outside of what I just said. It could be apartment buildings, could be office buildings, could be retail shopping centers, storage facilities, things like that. Even vacant land could really be a commercial deal. The goal of commercial real estate is to treat it like a business that makes money. That's probably the biggest thing. If it makes money, it's like a business, commercial real estate. If it's like a personal residence of some kind, it's residential real estate. It's probably the easiest way to look at it. You're it's obviously a piece of real estate that you're not going to actually live in, right? You're buying it purely as an investment to make money. That's the biggest thing right there. Now that we know the definitions, let's talk about the differences in how to evaluate these two different types of assets, because that's certainly very, very different. In residential, what you do is you take what's called a comp or a comparable. And what you're looking at is let's think of a subject property and what the properties around it are selling for. And you have to try to find very similar attributes to that property in terms of maybe square footage, the year it was built, the lot size are all going to come into play, the number of bedrooms, the number of bathrooms, the school district, of course, is going to play a difference too. Once you find all the homes that are similar, you start looking at what the valuation might be. Now, depending on how nice the property is, maybe recent rehab that might have been done, all this is going to have a bearing on how much that property is worth. Now, if you're talking about flipping properties, for instance, depending on what that house is worth fully flipped, maybe it might be worth $450,000. If it needs a little bit of work, maybe it's probably only worth $400,000. So you buy it for 400K, put a little bit of money into it, and maybe it's worth 450. But obviously, figuring out the value of residential real estate is somewhat easy to do. But like I said, the bare minimum here to realize that it's all based on a comparable. How much are the other houses nearby? In commercial, the primary way to determine value is really using what's called NOI, that's net operating income, and a cap rate, a capitalization rate. Two different things. There's certainly a lot more to it, but these are the two primary levers that you're working with. So, like I said, NOI stands for net operating income. That is how much the property nets after all the expenses. Okay. Obviously, you got your rental income. which is what most people look at. But you also have operating expenses, insurance, taxes, maintenance, property management, all the different things that go into running a property. Commercial real estate, then you also have to consider the cap rate. Now, the cap rate is a return on the investment that you're looking at for that asset class in that area. So again, cap rate is highly sensitive depending on the area, depending on where it's located. So for example, let's say you hear someone saying that a property is being traded at a 6 cap. What they're saying is the cap rate for that asset in that area is 6%, meaning that for every $100,000 they invest, they're going to earn 6% on that deal. So theoretically, $1 million property should make $60,000 a year. Now, if you're going to reverse engineer this, you're going to figure out what the property is worth, what's worth going into if you divide it by the cap rate as well. So let's say you're looking at a property here in Cleveland, Ohio, and has an NOI of $1 million after all the expenses. And everything in this property legitimately makes $1 million. So it's a real number, right? There's no fluff. There's no other stuff that brokers like to add in. It's a real number. And let's say that the cap rate in that area is 5%. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to take $1 million, divide it by 5%. Now, when you divide it by that 5%, you have to move that decimal place over 2 times, and it's going to be divided by 0.05. Okay. So $1 million divided by 0.05 equals 20 million. So essentially, a property here in Cleveland is worth $20 million based on that cap rate. So generally, that's how it's calculated. So as you can see, it's very, very different in terms of how you value residential real estate versus commercial real estate. With residential, you really only add value by fixing it up and making it look really, really nice and pretty, and to get it at or above the nicest comparable. Now, you don't want to get too far up. You don't want to overdevelop anything, of course. But it's highly dependent on the value of the neighboring homes, not on cash flow. However, with commercial real estate, you add value by increasing your NOI, by increasing your net operating income. How you choose to increase your NOI could be a number of things. You can renovate the apartments. You can get some new leases, bang up the rents a little bit. You can lower your vacancy as well. You can add amenities to the property to generate more income. So maybe you can add laundry, you can add vending, maybe you cut some of the expenses. Maybe you can make your electricity or water bill lower by bringing in by charging it back to the tenant. You can put in more efficient management to lower the cost as well, your overhead. So there's a whole lot of ways to take multifamily and making it more profitable to increase the NOI, which again is the primary methodology of determining value. The cool thing is that it doesn't matter that the 100-unit apartment building, what it's selling for up the street, because your deal is completely different from theirs. Another big difference between residential and commercial is how you finance them. Now, as I said, on the residential side, you're going to use an FHA or a VA or a conventional loan. With commercial, there's many, many, many different types of products that are used to get lending on. We've used bridge loans, conventional loans, construction loans. We've done all different types of loans for all these different types of deals. Every deal is different, right? There are recourse, non-recourse loans too. Recourse means that you're personally guaranteeing a loan. Non-recourse means that you're not personally guaranteeing a loan. So with residential, when you're paying a loan, if you get foreclosed on, that's obviously very bad. In commercial, if you get foreclosed on, sometimes they not only take the property back, they come after you personally for any losses they may have on a full recourse deal anyway. Another big difference is how the banks evaluate you on these loans. On the residential side, they're looking at your debt to income ratio and your credit score. On the commercial side, they're looking for the asset itself, as well as the type of income it produces. How much money does it make? They also look at your track record as an investor. If you try to buy a 200-unit apartment building and you've never done one before, the chances are of you getting that loan is going to be very, very slim, right? They want to make sure that you have the capability to manage that asset, that you know how to run it, that you've done it before, right? So the best way to do that is if you partner with someone like me who's done tons of these deals, have a big resume to talk about, and to demonstrate that we had success running these types of assets. The bank will certainly feel a whole lot better investing in a deal that has experience behind it that can get the deal over the line and execute the business plan. So on top of that, with these commercial loans too, they also do a full-on interview of you. They talk to you about it, right? They want to know what you're going to do with the property. What's the game plan? What are you going to do with it? How are you going to get the NOI up? Certainly on the residential side, the lender doesn't really care all that much. they just look at your income, your personal income. How much money do you generate is what they're looking for, and they look at your credit score. So the very last thing I mentioned is important. On the residential side, the lender is looking at your individual ability to generate cash. That's really what they're looking for. On the commercial side, the lender is looking at the asset's ability to generate cash. This is because commercial deals are actual businesses that you're buying. The ability for you as an owner is directly related to the success of that property and executing the business plan. This is why partnering with great property management, with great legal teams, with great lenders, other real estate entrepreneurs is super, super important. Well, like I said earlier, this is just a very high-level discussion on getting into a deal. There's certainly a lot more to it. It all starts with your ability to bring value to a potential partner. That's really what it comes down to. Make this a priority if you haven't already. Check out the Bulletproof Cash Flow Show. It's entirely free. It's found on all the platforms. I have almost 400 interviews with some great real estate entrepreneurs and sales experts, and of course, capital raisers too. People that you need to really get deals done, all right? So be bulletproof, guys. I will talk to you soon.